good afternoon, everybody from London, or good morning or good evening to wherever you are in the world watching this webinar. Welcome and thanks for joining us this evening on a wonderful webinar on the digitization of the operating room. We have a wonderful panel for you, which I'll introduce you shortly. But before that, a little bit about who we are. Surgery International was launched a year ago to build a community of surgeons across the world to bring the latest news, the latest stories, and discuss the trends in healthcare, and particularly surgery in the years going forward. So do register for free at Surgery International. We now have an enormous reach with our community of surgeons across the world, reaching 18,000 surgeons in 138 countries and growing, of course, every day. We also have many non-clinical staff from OR also joining us from industry and other partnerships that we've created. Our last few webinars over the last 10 weeks have reached over 2,000 surgeons across the world. So thank you for joining us and engaging with our content. And we'll bring more to you, of course, going forward. Next month's webinar will be on surgical leadership. We have a wonderful panel again, and you get an email from us to join that webinar in May. So do watch out for your emails. So first of all, digitalization of the operating room. What does it actually mean? So one of the concepts that we've seen over the last 20 years is around digital health, which is now kind of commonplace in implementation of innovation across healthcare systems. It's quite a nebulous term. One of the things I've struggled with for a while is what is the terminology or the definition of digital surgery. And what I came up with a while ago, and there's a link to that, my LinkedIn article around what it could mean, is around 5 things. Connectivity and remote collaboration. It's around this whole concept of AI, data analytics, robotics, extended reality, and of course, the world of 3D printing. So it's a different term that's encompassing our lives and changing the face of surgery in this current modern times. And we're really lucky to be in this position where we're seeing so much change take place with these technologies that are revolutionizing our work. Without further ado, let's introduce this amazing panel from around the world. And I'm really excited, by the way. I've never had a chance to spend so much time with amazing people in the same Zoom together for a long time. So it's a great pleasure just to be moderating the session. So let's start from right to left on my screen. So first on my right is Ingo Eicher. Can you introduce yourself to the crowd, please?
Yeah, hello. My name is Ingo Eicher. I'm the director of JAF Medical Systems. We do system integrations, and we've been busy in the realm of digitizing the operating theater and enabling surgeons and technologies since 2008.
Thank you so much, and welcome to the webinar. Next is Thomas Knox.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. Pleasure to meet everybody. I'm Thomas Knox. I am the founder and CEO of Vitvio. We are doing computer vision and AI solutions for surgical operating theaters, specifically trying to help with efficiency and orchestration around the OR and trying to make things run a little bit smoother and more efficiently on a whole. A bit about my background in general. I've been part of a couple hypergrowth startups over the last couple of years in various industries, and now trying to take some of that technology and bring it on over. The most common one that everybody might be aware of is autonomous stores. So if you know the idea of Amazon Go, I helped build one of the biggest competitors to Amazon Go in the last decade. Pleasure to meet you.
Thank you so much for attending the webinar and gives the insights. Professor Bini is on a world tour at the moment. He's kind of on a mission, travel to every country to examine digital surgery. Is that right, Stefano?
Oh, it's close, Lash. I like it a lot. So thank you very much for being for letting me be here with you guys. It's an amazing panel. Congrats on Surgery International, man. You got this off the ground. It's working amazingly well. So as always, no disappointments from Shafi Ahmed. So glad to be in your company. I am an orthopedic surgeon. Thank you for being with those of us who are in this lowly part of the world. I'm an orthopedic surgeon at the University of California, San Francisco, where I'm also a chief technology officer. I'm also interested in digital health and tech, and launched the Digital Orthopedics Conference in San Francisco 8 years ago now, to bridge that gap between the world of digital health and clinical orthopedics. And since then, I've been very involved with this space and almost evangelizing about the need for us to pay attention, be involved, and utilize these technologies to better the care for our patients. So very excited to talk a little bit about the digital transformation of the operating room with this esteemed panel.
Thank you so much for coming along and attending the webinar for us. Thank you, Stefano. Marlies. Now, Marlies has the best title I've ever come across. Marlies.
Hi there, Shafi, and all of us. I'm very happy to be invited to this panel and to see so many familiar faces already. I'm a surgeon in Amsterdam UMC. I'm a professor of digital health there and founder of the Digital Health Research Institute. I'm a former CMIO of our government, and I'm currently leading a large Horizon Europe initiative across Europe on Keep Caring, which is installed to keep us caring with modern technology. So I'm happy to be here.
And thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. And Marlies is also a professor of surgery and serious games, the only person I know of that description in the world. So thanks for joining us, Marlies. And there's only one way to introduce our next kind of guest, and it's with these, right? What else did I possibly do? So Rafael, world famous Rafael, world's first surgeon who used a Google Glass, and Marlies also used them, of course, in the past. Rafael.
Thank you, Shafi, for the invitation, and it's really a pleasure, an honor to be here with you guys. And again, thank you for Surgeon International. I think it's a platform that is really make a big impact in what we do and how we do it. So I'm a Venezuelan surgeon, a Venezuelan American surgeon, general and trauma surgery, with a passion for the smart use of technology in order to help us connect and communicate better, to help us learn and teach better. I always talk about the pillars of healthcare being cost, outcomes, patient and provider experience, but also technology and humanity. I really am a believer that the smart use of tech can make a more humane medicine for both the patients and the providers, because physicians, nurses, technicians, et cetera. It's been a pleasure to know you along the way for this many years, trying to push this agenda, a good agenda, on how to improve what we do in healthcare and bring healthcare what it should be in the 21st century. So it's really a pleasure to be here and look forward to this next hour. Oh, and I gotta put the real headsets now, not more Google Glass. Now
that's the Vision Pro, right?
The Vision Pro, right?
Thanks for that, Rafael. We'll talk about that later, of course, during the discussion. So I'm going to start off with Marlies, first of all, and talk about her work around data, the OR, and how we digitalize it from a research perspective, and her work that she's been doing that's been groundbreaking over a long period of time. So Marlies, give us an insight into your work and what you think this actually concept means about digitalization of the OR.
Yes, thank you for that question, Shafi. And it's a very wide question, of course. I think many of us can deliberate on it. I always try to find a way in which technology fits and helps us, and try to avoid technology cluttering our spaces, because I do not believe shoving in more technology per se will help us in any way. I think it's always vital to see the opportunity matched with the problem. And if there's no problem, there's no opportunity. So that's why I'm so interested in performing research in the digital health space. And there are many things going on. For me personally, it's in the OR. We try to figure out if we have a shared mental model on what's going on. And for that, we use black box technology. I did not invent it at all. I just saw the opportunity of implementing it in our workspace, and to give a voice really to the people normally not speaking up that much, but who do have a lot of insights because they have probably more overview than the surgeon who's really focused on the task. So I think using technology to strengthen teams, and also to pinpoint things that may be better, for me in the OR is really helpful. And of course, I'm also fond of gadgets and games for girls, gadgets for guys. But that's playtime. That said, playing is the most elevated form of investigation. perhaps. So give it some fun and also look at it seriously. I think that's my crossroads for research.
Great. I just exploring that a bit further. I mean, you mentioned that OR black box that obviously Tina Granshaw's been doing work in Canada, now, of course, Professor of Surgery in Stanford. Where are we with that in terms of that data collection, the analysis? I mean, where do you think we are in that kind of journey at the moment, Marlies?
Sorry, where I would fit in there, you mean?
Yeah, and the whole concept of the OR black box data, are we there to seeing it in practice being working?
Yeah, I think, you know, technology is not so much the issue there. It's about the rules and boundaries, about ethics, about law, about people, you know, also a little bit afraid of being videotaped, although we explain to them that you're stick figured, that your voice is altered, that no one may access the data for any other purpose than growth of yourself or your team. It cannot be used against you, but those rules and regulations are not inherently intertwined with technologies. It's a rules and regulations set we need to define for people to be able to use the technology for what it was built. And that is a very, how do I say it, a very research-rich area, because it also, even if we have the European data space, it's also always a little bit different. It's a cultural thing. It's, you know, people have to get, you know, need to get convinced by the technology itself that they can benefit from it. And it's not a pet project of the next surgeon who wants to be the first to do this or that.
Yeah.
So explaining that well, I think that's a big challenge for me and for the organization.
Yeah.
And also to see where we can use it. We can use it for team training. We can use it for research questions. We currently use it to build AI algorithms.
Yeah.
Although also there, it's a question, what is easy to measure or what is, you know, what is important to measure. Yeah. For instance, a blood loss algorithm, I don't give so much about it because I can see when it's bleeding. I much rather have an algorithm that helps me something I'm not looking for, per se.
So we'll come into that in a moment. Just be clear to everybody who may not know what the OR black box is. It's where you collect all the data from the OR. That's the laparoscopic stacks or the video stacks, the room picture, all the kind of the parametric data from the patient, for example, and it goes into like the airplane black box. And to analyze that data is one of those key kind of interests that is taking place for the last few years. And Marlies has been doing a lot of research around that, of course. We'll come back to AI and data in a second, but Rafael, I'm going to come to you next, Rafael, because you've been exploring really from an early stage, one of the earliest pioneers, if you like, on bringing innovation and digitalization into the OR with teaching through Google Glass, the virtual reality. Tell me where we are with extended reality, the use cases, what are you seeing, what's exciting as we go forward into the future?
Hey, Shafi. Well, I think XR is reaching a point now where the devices that we're going to have that potential of doing this or that are here already. If you look at devices like, you know, the Vision Pro, or you look at devices like you know, the HP device or the Lenovo device or the Meta device, you know, the device is not so much the issue anymore. I think it's the use that we give it. XR has reached a point where spatial computing is a real thing, where you can make the space around you your desktop. So I don't think we are there yet, but we are. I always say for the last year or so, been saying we are at the end of the beginning, because XR now is not just XR, but it's XR with LLM algorithms, with generative AI embedded in the XR images that you're seeing or the avatars that you're seeing. You can have a conversation that it's smart, you know, with an entity about really anything. You could be a patient in the OR table, and you can be getting you know, psychological therapy to deal with your anxiety from, you know, the operation, before the operation. But I used to say XR is for education, for diagnostics, but now we are for treatment as well. Treatment has been outside of the OR for several years now. It's been more than proven and validated that XR for treatment in medicine is a real thing. But in the OR, we were always very, very shy and late to the game. But now we are seeing technologies like EX, for example, right? Robert Masson's company that is helping the organizational part of the operating room, the hundreds of instruments, the hundreds of steps to try to organize everyone's a game in a way that it makes sense with the help of these technologies, with XR in particular. You have companies like Medivi's AR with the surgical AR platform. You have Brain Lab. You have a number of entities now that are playing a role intraoperatively, where they're using XR tools, not to substitute, but to enhance the tools that we already use and to augment the human surgeon, where you can have the XR images, for example, that now have a submillimetric precision to help you do a biopsy or to organize the angle of attack for a cut or a perforation. Mostly neurosurgical, mostly orthopedic surgery, but now we can add the AI component where now the algorithms are helping with all the data, real and synthetic data. The algorithms are now smart enough to tell you where to go and where not to go and highlight areas of danger or whatnot. So the perfect digital surgical assistant in a way. I think that there's a lot of noise out there and people using, this device or that device in the operating room for the first time or for not the first time. But I think that we are at the very end of the beginning, where now we're going to start to see technologies that are really going to play a real role. There's a company called Mantis, for example, where they're using digital technology as simple as a glass with, stereoscopic vision plugged to your source of video, for example, and you can see a magnified, high definition, very well lighted image in 3D of what you would be seeing with loops or with your plain eyes. Technologies doesn't have to be XR only. I think that, the digitalization of the OR is going to many other fronts that we could only dream of just a few, maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
And it's coming quite rapidly. So to summarize what you've said, it's kind of XR's got many uses. Surgical navigation, which is using AI to augment the surgeon almost. That's kind of summary of kind of where we are. I love that kind of sense of how we push and drive that forward to help us. I've always said that we've been analog for so long, and now we're becoming digital surgeons and embracing new technology to make us better clinicians going forward. Moving on to the next area that I think Stefano is covering a lot, around wearables, sensors, monitoring, pre-post-op care. And that is also part of the digitalization of the OR, because looking after patients before and afterwards as well. I'd love to get your thoughts on what you're doing and perhaps some examples from the trips you've seen around the world, Stefano, what's happening out there. Sometimes we're in our little own microcosm in our own little institution, yet the world is moving at pace. So tell me about what you've experienced on a global travels.
Oh my gosh. Yes, I've been traveling for about 3.5 months now. Went west from California, New Zealand, Australia, Singapore, Bali, India, Middle East, back to Europe. And now I've been working my way around Europe, speaking to various innovators. And it's one thing that's a tying trace is that wherever I am, there's always somebody innovating, and they're innovating in environments that occasionally you think are very impossible to innovate in, yet it's done. It requires an identification, I think has been said a few times, and particularly by Marlies very well, that you have to have, if there's no problem, there's no opportunity. The question is, which problem are you chasing? And then what resources are available to you in that particular environment? For example, in the United States, we're very short on people resources, but in some parts of the world, people resources are abundant. So solving a people problem isn't going to be effective. So it's important to understand as you go around that it won't be the same innovation. So I'm just saying that out front. And it's been remarkable to see what the issues are. Let's see. And one of the things that I enjoyed about work in Australia and New Zealand was that because they could innovate. They don't have to worry about regulations nearly as much as we have. So they're able to actually test things very quickly, literally bring to market. So I met with a startup group that had a number of of really interesting ideas. One, Shafi, you might appreciate the ability to create an anastomosis robotically, intraoperatively in a matter of minutes with excellent accuracy, but not with veins, with arteries, which apparently is quite difficult. You're a master of this, but they've solved that problem. Like, you just have to come to market very quickly, and they're going to, because they're able to innovate so fast. When you move into Southeast Asia, the questions that arose were about scale, the unbelievable demand is hard to match. You're like, well, there's not money. Actually, no, there's plenty of funding available. Some of it coming from the government, some from large groups of wealthy individuals that are able to access healthcare and in hospital systems that are as modern, if not more modern, than the ones we have available. They're able to build tech stacks from day one that would be the envy of my hospital in California. Moving to the Middle East, completely different environment and completely different needs. Turns out insurance tech winds up being a very important area, and they're growing so quickly. They're trying to understand what their populations need. Their populations themselves are heterogeneous. One health system I'm involved with is trying to figure out how to manage health records. Not only are they 27 different languages, they're in different type. The letters look different, the content looks different. And so seeing how people are addressing each of these challenges, which are quite separate from the more mundane ones that we seem to be addressing. I don't mean mundane because they're bad, they're just something we've been hearing about over and over again. I found remarkable. I could go on for some time about these individual examples, but let me give you one that touches on what Rafael just said. And it wasn't necessarily in the surgical space, but I think it's telling. It was an Indian fellow who was involved with patients. He has a business taking care of patients who had injuries. And he's acutely aware of the problems in a country like India or in this part of the world where someone has lost a leg, their ability to take care of themselves and provide for others. And he built with a headset that blind people could wear, so they could read what currency had been handed to them in the market, and they knew how much change to give back. Once these people were supplied with this $200 headset, they'll read back to them what the currency was. They started using it to educate themselves, to read text back to themselves. And within 6 months, he sold 2,000 of these devices at $200 each to people who had almost nothing on credit. And the reason I love that is that 2006 months, I don't care what you're building, that's amazing. That means you've actually hit a problem for which there was an opportunity, right? When you find a pain point in the health system or in the care system that this technology solves in a way that nothing else could do, this is where we see adoption. When technology skirts around that final problem, you don't get the adoption you think you would have. So this is what I'm just tracking as I go around, is that what's really sticking and why is it sticking? And it's been a tremendous journey.
Thank you for sharing that experience, and you're absolutely right. We talk about democratization of surgery. Often we talk about technology, digital translation. The question of how do you scale it? How do you bring it into all parts of the world, including lower middle-income countries? And we'll come to that in a moment and discuss that further, but how we truly do democratize surgery in using these technologies as we go forward. Now, Thomas, we spoke a little earlier. It was great to finally meet and find out more about your company, which we'll hear in a moment.
That's a pleasure.
It's great to have you on the webinar because you told me one fact during our conversation that in 2019, a study in Michigan, in one of the hospitals, that we were wasting $1,800 per case because of inefficiencies in the OR. And if you play that out, because of poor planning, inefficient use of time, space, and staff, that equates to $1.4 million per year per theatre across the US.
Yep, that was actually a study done by Dr. Claudio Rosales, who's one of our advisors, and actually one of the papers we base this off of. We kind of started to dive deeper into this and trying to realize what is the actual extent of this, and not just like from our perception, right? Because it's easy for us to come and tell you numbers as a company, and it's it's not that trustworthy when it comes from a company. But we wanted to go find, let's say peer-reviewed journals that have actually come out about this, and there's quite a lot of them when you start to dive into it, talking about the different levels of inefficiency and so on. But there was one, this one from Claudio Rosales was really, let's say, comprehensive. And of course, it's $1,800 of wastage, time wastage, tool wastage, et cetera. This is just taking it all together and aggregating it. And if you ever want to read the paper, you can always reach out to me. I can send it to you. But it was really comprehensive, and it breaks it down by where that wastage is. Now, the point is, you're not going to solve all of that. But the point is that now there's kind of an idea of where it is. And I think that there's a really big piece, especially with what we're trying to do at Vitvio. It has a lot to do and align with similar to a black box of kind of going in. And I think there's this idea that data is king, bringing transparency into it. The idea now is that we don't really know, and a lot of this stuff we kind of just write off because we're used to it, and this is just what the standard has been forever. Or there's this concept that it's not able to be changed, and we want to come in and kind of, let's say, make that very clear. Where are these levers at, and are there ways that we can reduce them that don't have a negative impact? The idea I really think across all of this is we always say, like, I really love this. There was a surgeon that I was talking to not too long ago and said, never add an additional step to the team or you'll end up on the operating table next. So trying to reduce steps, make things a little bit easier for them, but also going in and saying, okay, how can we make things run a little bit smoother? Because just because people focus on efficiency and this aspect of where there's opportunity to try to reduce this wastage doesn't mean you have to add pressure to the team. And I think that's a very big misconception that needs to be fought against. And I think, just as some people have referenced in this call already, there's this kind of idea of a fear of AI and a fear of technology and what that means. I do think that there's a big change coming. Every hospital I talked to, honestly, when we first started Vitvio, one of the biggest things that we were concerned about was, will people even allow us to go into the OR? Will they even be interested to have this kind of tech, or is it going to be too scared of this big brother concept? But I really think there's been a change of mind coming about, because the reality is that implementing such technologies is not a big brother. It doesn't mean that they're coming into that we specifically are coming in to try to micromanage or do anything of the sort. Instead, we're coming in trying to make things just go a little bit smoother across the entire operations so that your day is more predictable and easy. And that leads to the efficiencies, because most of the inefficiencies that you see in that report are not inside the operating theater. They're actually outside of it. It's all of these like communication delays. So looking at these, I call it like the death by 1,000 cuts, and you end up having get to the last case of the day and you have to delay it or cancel it, or you have to run into overtime. And depending on where you're at, sometimes it's paid, sometimes it's not. The idea is that this adds a lot of stress and reduces our throughput. So that's kind of where we come in to just give that bit of transparency to kind of to drive that.
Thomas, can you tell us a bit more about your solution that you can share with the audience? I was mesmerized by what you're trying to do and how far you've gone. Tell us more about what you're creating.
Yeah. Maybe one of the things that I want to set a pre-step this, or I guess a precursor to that piece, is to say, I think that in healthcare it's almost like some of the technology advancements is like a dirty word, because there's been a lot of big promises in the last couple of years, and not a lot of delivery of it, which is completely understandable. And that's something that now, as much as the technology and a concept is a really good idea, it's also about timing. When is the technology actually mature enough to start coming into that market? And just to give some context to where we come from Vitvio, you guys today, every one of you, some of you have probably already been there, gone into like autonomous stores. You've tried out Amazon Go. You've tried out even probably my stores as well, because we white label it, sell it to like Aldi, Carrefour, Żabka, these big players, Dollar General in the US. Now we know, and all my team comes from that background, we know the technology is at a place that it can work. And we're coming in and saying, hey, let's take our experience from that and bring it over into the surgical operating theater. Now, what does that mean? So basically what we do is we go and we deploy cameras into operating theaters, let's say like 5 to 10 cameras. And we start looking at all the processes and people, fixtures, fittings, et cetera, and then start looking into opportunities for efficiency and continuous learning. Now, really, the main things that we're looking at is, for example, trying to understand the stages of a surgery. So when did the patient arrive? When did they go under anesthetic? When was knife to skin? So on and so forth. What that then allows us to do is start looking at creating runway estimates. So saying like how long is left until the surgery is finished, and using those as a context, not to look on the OR and say, how do you move faster? That's not our goal. We believe the clinicians are doing exactly what they need to do, but to say more of, when can we start to parallelize work streams? So when we get to the last 20 minutes of a surgery, ping off to the preoperative nurses, start prepping the next patient, capturing consent, doing everything that they need to do to start getting the patient there on time, or sending up to the cleaning crew to say, hey, come to OR3 in the next 10 minutes. The whole idea of this is that if you don't have to think about it, you can stay laser focused on the patient, and you don't have to be thinking about all these administrative and logging tasks in Epic and all this kind of stuff that you typically have to do in an OR. And, Shafi, and when we spoke earlier, I gave you an example. I was actually scrubbed into a surgery not too long ago where they were actually, the surgeon was talking us through the steps as it was going. It was really, really great process. But at the end, when they were doing the count, they realized they had left something in the patient. So of course they do the right thing and they go back in, they find the gauze and they pull it out. That takes maybe another 10, 15 minutes. Completely understandable delay. It's not a massive deal. However, the nurse that was also supposed to alert to the next preoperative team was part of the team that was helping find the gauze. So by the time that I was finished, because everything else had been already, this distraction of having to go back, which is of course needed, they had forgotten to alert to the preoperative. So then it kind of delayed the rest of the day by about an hour. So these are the kind of things that we try to solve. On top of that, we look at like tool wastage and what kind of trays that you're using in the OR and which tools are actually being used. But really the idea on a whole is just to, see where we can speed things up without adding any pressure.
Thank you. If that's the only problem you saw in the OR, you haven't been to enough operating.
No, it's definitely not the only one. It's just you got to start somewhere. If you go, it's death by scope creep, Shafi.
Thank you. Thanks for that. And thanks for sharing your thoughts and views. I think we'll move on to Ingo next, because we talk about technology, talk about computerization, AI, data, all that kind of stuff, but it all requires system integration. That's always been the Achilles heel of any institution, around integration and around things connecting properly and understanding each other. And that's why I think where Ingo comes in with his company, what he's done, building companies and actually building technologies that come within a system and how to bring them in much more effectively. So Ingo, give me your thoughts around what you've seen around the digital OR, the barriers for what you're trying to do, and what are the potential solutions as we go forward.
Yeah, so we've been in space, for quite a long time, and from a point where things were pretty analog, from analog systems and the first endoscopy systems used to record surgery, was a brilliant startup. So technology has come a very long way. You guys here on the panel are, of course, on the forefront. And, the OR has changed a lot. And there is a lot of, great efforts into optimizing workflows, into adopting new technologies, and change care for the patient. The issue we've always, seen, and what also comes through in a lot of the bits that people just mentioned is the adoption of technology. We have technology coming from very many different angles to help different parts of the workflow. If it's optimizing team performance, if it's optimizing care or vision or pre or post-op planning and treatment. What we always have seen over the years is that the technology implemented and bringing the technology together to help people apply it always succeeds or fails with the adoption and the willingness of the people, to actually say, oh, we're going to embrace this. We have something new. We have, we worked with great innovators like the operating theaters of the future. About 15 years ago, they were trying amazing technology in Norway, way ahead of their time. And it took, almost 10 years for people elsewhere to catch up to that level, to get technology to that level. And it's the adoption, and there's, of course, bits that play into it, like the laws, the regulation, the ethics, like Marlies mentioned before, that is not making surgery a playground like, software programming. You program, you test, you break, you fix, you go back. You haven't got that many leeways in surgery. You have to make sure there is patients and lives at stake at times, and technology has to deliver. So there is, as Thomas said, technology comes with big promises, something doesn't deliver, but then it's the adoption. And the adoption is, if you hit the pain point, like Stefano mentioned earlier, that's when you really get technology to succeed. But you know, you guys are at the forefront, and I hope that, you know, the majority of people that join this webinar today will also join you on this forefront to drive the technology adoption forward.
Thank you for that. So to the audience, we'll be taking Q&A in about 8 or 9 minutes. So please do put your questions onto the chat, and I'll try to get through as many as we can when we're ready. Now, we couldn't finish this webinar, of course, without talking about AI. It's on everyone's lips. If you don't mention AI in any webinar, you become obsolete. So without wanting to become obsolete, we'll address that straight away. Marlies, you're kind of a data guru, AI and stuff. A lot of interest, of course. Where does AI sit in surgery at the moment? Where do you think we are? And where do you think we might head towards in your experience and what your understanding is so far?
Well, to be honest, I think we are nowhere.
That's honest, I guess.
I think we're just embarking upon, you know, we see lots of things going on, particularly on pattern recognition in dermatology or in radiology, but those are quite kind of set rules. Now, surgery is a profession without too many rules. It's about creativity and solving things, you know, that are a little bit different every time. So I can imagine for scheduling and planning, you know, then you can do preemptive modeling with AI, but to help support and maybe also even at the wards, you know, to predict when someone is able to, you know, to go home faster based on bioparameters. So that I can understand. But in the OR, it's such a complex system. It relies so much on interconnectivity and such a multitude of data sources that I think their AI is nowhere near where we would like it to be in terms of helping us, you know, forecasting warning signs or, you know, helping us to the next phase in surgery. I think there we just, you know, we have dreams and that's where it starts. And we need to find a way to bring the dream alive. And that usually start with the quick wins, because there we can learn from. And I think that's exactly where we are now.
That's, I think, very honest appraisal. I think we do think about AI taking over everything going forward, but we're still limited. And I think Thomas, of course, would probably disagree in some regards. What he's trying to do and achieve using AI and data analytics to look at the efficiency of a theatre.
Actually, Shafi, if you wouldn't mind, can I jump in on that?
Please do, please.
I wouldn't say that I disagree. I think that the big thing that we all have to think about is that AI is not a catch-all that you can solve every problem. I think that you have to start on certain problems that are a little bit easier, and then over time, iteratively like gain traction and over time and learn. The biggest problem I think that we have with AI in the surgical theater today is a lack of data. If you don't have the data to train and you don't have an easy way to gather that data, there's nothing to do. You can't train it, it's impossible. And getting that data is such a high barrier to entry that it really keeps a lot of people away from it. I mean, like there's a very good reason that Vitvio, why we start with the operations side, because that's something that we can put cameras in the ceiling, start to detect the heuristics of what people are doing in the room, the semantics of what tools they're using and why. And that's something that's a fairly simple problem to start with, to be honest, of all the problems that we could do in the OR. But once you start to look into, like, for example, you were kind of alluding to, Marlies, like the clinical decisions aspect and helping detect these early signs of things going the wrong direction. We are years away from that. It is really difficult because it is such, let's say, you need the context of everything going on in the OR to be able to do that properly, and we're just not there yet.
Yeah, and I love what you said. You call it OR mission control, right? I love.
Yes, we call it OR mission control. That's what we're doing. Yes.
I hope you trademark that. Yeah. So we look forward to hearing more about that. Rafael, another question people often ask: we're digitalizing the operating room and the whole process of surgery, and sometimes that creates a divide globally. We talk about often, you and I, on conversations around democratization of surgery. You know, the Lancet Commission and all the things we've learned before about the inequalities of healthcare. So, can this make it easier to access surgery, do you think? Where do you think we are in that conversation? How do we support the low middle income countries who are planning, who are dreaming big, Marlies, also be part of this journey into digitalization of the OR?
Yeah, I think that again, the smart use of the technology is where it lies. if we talk about connecting and communicating better in and from the OR, someone comes to help you operate better or to learn an operation, or someone is there to learn an operation from you, opening up spaces to people who didn't have space before, using technology, using digitalization of the OR. I think that certainly technology is helping break those barriers and that gap between the ones who do have and the ones who don't. Certainly, we all of us, live in a very, very, very tiny bubble, and you know very well, and many of you as well have been in places where the world is a completely different universe, right? And I think that these technologies are helping to some degree, break those barriers. Every time I go to a place and talk about the possibilities and the future and the dreams of what technology can bring to improve how we do things, people always say, that's there, but here we don't even have electricity 24 hours a day, or
Right.
the minimum wage is $1, and this device is $3,500. You got a Vision Pro that is $3,500. So I think that it's there are different levels, right? But overall, I'm a believer that the technology can really help break the barriers and open the opportunities to people who want to learn better, who want to have access to things that were not possible before. I think we are in a way getting slowly there. I see places, for example, in Latin America, where innovation is happening, everywhere in healthcare, I mean, but even in the operating room, because the problems are different, and the opportunities are different, and the necessities are different. So people invent different ways of doing things by using technology, and in a way digitalizing the operating rooms, and that they might have a headset where they just or they might have just did a 3D printed image of or a 3D printed organ, to guide their surgery better. And you see a lot of these innovations happening in places that typically are not, in the at the top of the technological or economical or socio-economical world. So I am a believer that technology help us democratize, if we may use that word. I don't like that word so much anymore, but democratize access to healthcare and to surgery, to better surgery.
Thanks.
I think it's worth, if I may interject, I want to bring up something that Marlies said at the beginning, which is you have to, best technology is the simplest technology. One of the things that's so important when you travel to these other countries is not to show them, I'm sorry, there's a VR headset, but to show them what you can do with a text platform to manage your patients and to track them. There are cell phone-based communications in many of these less advanced countries, actually further along in terms of the hardware itself and their ability to communicate through them, payment models. There's so many things we can solve around the OR. But as opposed to the OR itself, I know there's a surgical conversation, but the idea of applying AI to the physical world, the AI, as we know, the machine learning, the XR, all that happens in the virtual world. It happens in the cloud. What we do every day in the operating room is very much in the physical world. Now, AI for the physical world is the next frontier. It's coming. It's called physical AI that takes data from sensors and enables computers or software to act on the physical world. But it's a very, very, very beginning. So expecting AI to be changing the operating room right now, which is a highly physical environment, is, I think, possibly slightly misplaced. What we can do with AI is work before and after, as has been mentioned already. And whether it's planning, predictive analytics, post-operative care models, hospital at home, all that is based on AI, but the operating room itself will probably remain in the physical world for some time.
But like Stefano, just to give a question, I'd love to hear your thoughts. One of the things I've been talking to, one of the top hospitals in the world recently, and they were saying to me, it's kind of a quote, just saying that the idea that we're going to be interacting with an EHR directly, physically in the next 10 years is mind-blowing. that we, at this point, like AI will probably be going to a place of trying to replace a lot of these manual, monotonous tasks to try to get us focused on what's most important, the patient, right? Like you focus on the patient, and you try to deliver the best quality care you can, because that's the hard part that's really hard to solve with these kind of technologies, right? But, you know, let's say tracking, like as we're doing, tracking the stage of surgery, saying when knife to skin was, when was the anesthetic start, or keeping surgical notes. A lot of that is something that you could do behind the scenes. And it's not that far off if you look at the current technologies of LLM and computer vision, right? I mean, I don't want to bias you there. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
No, but everything you said is not the operating part.
Oh, yes, the operating part. I agree. Like the physical operating part, 100%. I think that's pretty far off.
It's all the stuff that happens around the surgery.
Yes,
yes.
A quick question, Rafael, just a quick answer, then we go to the questions, right? Very quickly, thank you.
Yes, about AI during the operation. One aspect of AI in the operating room that is being developed, and it's going to be very, very helpful, I think, during that physical part, is when we can measure the surgeon. When we can measure the surgeon, every variable that you can think of that can be measured on the surgeon, from the EEG to the GST to the HRV, to every variable physiologic in the surgeon or the surgical team, and then you can use AI algorithms to optimize the performance and teach the personnel, the team, to perform the best possible. I think that's one use of AI that is worth looking at, and that is being developed. Richard Hart, for example, is working on some of this, and other people. But I think that AI, I agree with Marlies, in the operating room, we are almost the black sheep of AI in healthcare, because in any other area of healthcare, AI, from machine learning to deep learning, all the way to generative AI, I think that healthcare is taking an amazing step forward with the use of these technologies, except in the OR. The OR were very, very crude still.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. We're still very analog, and that's why there's so much opportunity. Although we're quite keen, we drive change, and all of us here have been innovators over the last 10 years, there's still that kind of stickiness, the translation has been a problem for so long. But we'll watch this space as we go forward. Now, a lot of questions are coming through the WhatsApp channel. So let me ask a few questions. First of all, let's go. Pedro Basilio, a great friend of mine from Brazil. Hope you're enjoying your time in Rio. I look forward to seeing you at some point in the future. Pedro, I'll be in Sao Paulo next month, so we'll get in touch. He's saying that in Brazil, we are certifying and inputting data by AI in our Society of Colorectal Surgery, and to bring it into the app to have more reliable data. Is anyone using data, collecting it regularly for a Society of Surgeons that you've come across to enable an app kind of representation? Maybe Marlies, you might be able to answer that, because you do a lot of app work and app design, right?
No, not in that area. It's also, we have to deal, I don't know how it is in Brazil, but we have to do with the MDR, the Medical Data Directive. We have to do with the EC markings. They are quite strict. You can only do it with completely depersonified data. And then again, it's hard, I think, to impute those data to fit a profile of an app user you don't know. So I think for general, let me say differently, if it is meant to guide patients, then it's going to be a class 2B app, which means that's going to be a highly risk app, although in Europe, for which I think it's not wise to send into the general audience, because it may misinform someone based on data that's not one-on-one fitting for that person. Yeah. That is really hard to explain to a person.
Yeah, sure, thanks.
I answer it.
Another question from David Hall. David, hi. I think you're now in Boston, from I remember, from Taiwan. Good to hear from you. And David runs a innovator forum for surgeons across the world. So if you're not part of it, do join his WhatsApp group. We have some amazing people around the world discussing innovation and digital surgery. So David's question was, what efforts are being made to work with advocate influencer doctors from the inside, such as through innovation upskilling programs? That includes mindset change, change management. Now that's key. Here, I think we've got quite unique in the sense that we're all change makers, we're innovators, we're early adopters, but we're very much kind of less than 1% of surgeons across the world, I'm imagining. How do we upskill the rest of that population to think around different ways of thinking? And I'd love to get your thoughts on that. Stefano, I'd love to come to you on that one. How do we upskill the rest of society and the rest of our community to understand what we're talking about at the moment?
I'm not entirely convinced that we need to do that. I think the rest of the world is doing it for us. We're lagging, right? So if the people are using any kind of video games, they already know how to use that. If they're on the internet, they know how to use text imaging. I think actually the applications that that we need to deliver to patients to connect them are the same ones that are being used in other verticals outside of healthcare. So I think the specific question to your answer is, how do we upskill people, as in patients and also physicians, how to use the technology? I think it's something we don't have to worry about.
Thanks for that. Let's go to another question here.
Shafi, if you don't mind, can I just add one piece to that?
Of course you can. Yeah, of course you can.
I think, like, also just maybe I'm biased because I'm coming from a different industry, right? But one of the things that I've noticed is that ever since we've started, speaking to hospitals and so on, when I come in and I say, like, for example, Amazon Go, or, they understand what I was doing previously, I think there's a lot of these technologies that have been matured in other markets that now people are starting to see, oh, they can actually work somewhere else. So now there's maybe a chance they can work here. Not a guarantee, but at least a chance. And I think that's opened people's minds a lot to this. And on top of that, I think that there's a fundamental shift in the way that people are thinking, especially after COVID, that there's a lot of pressure. You have rising costs, rising backlogs, rising age as a population, lack of medical staff. And all of this is kind of going, okay, now we need to start looking at the technology, because we can't just keep doing it the same way we've been doing it for a while. And I think that that's kind of forcing people to start investigating it on their own and getting an understanding of it, similar to what Stefano was saying.
Thank you for that. Go to a question by Gavin Shane. Gavin, you're not a dinosaur, and thanks for the question. Right? Let's address that. So he's saying basic things. We're talking about VR, XR, AR, and I get that. Sometimes about basic connectivity. We've seen that, right? In the OR, you can't get 3G, 4G signal. So what we're talking about is cloud, AI, machines, etc. What about the basic components of improving access, communication, connectivity? I can try and answer that, Gavin, for a little bit myself, because I work with Vodafone, a telephone provider in the UK, as the ambassador for 5G connected health across Europe. They're working hard to understand how do we bring connectivity into the OR. And they had a solution, it was called a 5G gig box. We literally have a box, you press it, and out comes connectivity, irrespective of trying to connect to various systems. So they had a novel method around that. Any other ideas, guys, about how we even provide basic connectivity, not just in the UK or the US or Europe, but globally? Any ideas?
I would just add maybe to this. I think that there's two parts to it. First one is I've actually, Shafi, funny that you've worked on that. I worked on something similar with Verizon, so I've done exactly the same thing, running off 5G. They were a partner of ours in my previous company. But one of the other things I think is also like trying to, when you take technologies, I think that's also really important to make them robust to these infrastructure challenges. Because a lot of those take a really long time, because once you've installed the infrastructure for the internet and it's, let's say, subpar than you would expect, all the technology around it have to be robust to being able to survive in such an environment, that it shouldn't be something that's completely dependent on such of these problems. Dealing with the underlying issue, well, we should call up some of the execs from some of the telecom companies and start complaining.
Well, I think it's important to keep in mind that a lot of the technical challenges that we're mentioning are temporary, right? And it shouldn't prevent the digital innovators out there moving forward while they wait for the technology to catch up, because it does take those of us like yourself, Gavin, at the firing line, the front end, working through these problems, understand the challenges, to create a market even for these technologies. So I think it's important that, yes, you may have a little bit of a difficulty uploading your data, but it was a lot harder last year. It'll be a lot easier next year, and that trend will continue.
Thank you. And Warren Guru, great to see you again. I think we met in London a while ago, a great protagonist for global health. The innovation group, we'll try to, David, if you can put it into the chat for us, so if people can join your innovation group. A lot of people are interested in what you're doing and the training courses that you provide. So can you do that for us, if you don't mind, on the chat? I think we're coming to the end of the seminar, but I'm going to ask a question to the panel very quickly around what do you think surgery will look like in the OR in 2030? That's only a few years away. So we're just a one-liner for people as we go around. We'll start off with Marlies.
What will it look like? I hope it will be decluttered. I hope we can go back a little bit more to the core with technology helping us in a intuitive way, not getting too much in our way. I think that would be wonderful.
Thank you for that. We're going to come to Ingo next. Obviously, you've done a lot of work with tech. What do you hope for 2030, the digital operating room?
Well, I would hope that we see a lot more, technology supporting surgery to become smarter and get over some bottleneck inefficiencies. Specifically, as Stefano said, let's hope that technological challenges are temporary. However temporary is defined over the last few years, we have unfortunately seen, that the term temporary in healthcare, especially in surgery, stretches a little longer than in other areas.
So smarter surgery by 2030. I like the word smarter surgery, sounds great. Stefano, Professor Bini, you're always very kind of articulate in these matters and a futurist. What do you think?
I think by 2030 we'll be in the implementation phase of application of AI solutions. So we'll have collected the data, we'll have created algorithms, we'll be in the middle of applying those algorithms to our decision making. And it'll be another 5 years really till we know what the impact will be of those algorithms, so we can loop back and optimize them for an outcome, because we haven't quite shown that all this stuff actually changes outcomes yet. So we'll be in that phase where in orthopedics, there's a lot of work being done on preoperative planning. So it's not so much in the OR, but in the leading to the operating room, we'll have a lot more information. Hopefully we'll be better at what we're doing, and then we'll see if that actually impacts outcomes.
We'll come back to you in 10 years' time, Stefano, and see where you are. Thomas, very quickly, we're running out of time, 30 seconds.
Yeah, I would say that I view it as like ambient technology. So basically all of the manual processes, all these things that are the struggles and get in the way of you focusing on the patient will be kind of just done in the background. And they're just things that you don't really need to think about anymore. I think that we'll move away, like at that point, I think we'll be in a place where the operation side of it and the things that are around the OR will be very well optimized and running. You just it just happens. And it's not really something you have to be constantly acting upon and wondering if somebody's doing their job or, taking the next patient, so on and so forth. But I think that we'll be on the very early stages of the intraoperative part, like going into the surgery and guiding how to do the surgery properly. I think there'll be a lot of training and guidance on that, and like early.
Very quickly, surgery navigation. That's what
exactly.
If I can bring you out of the virtual world to come to reality for a few seconds, what do you think about 2030? Last 30 seconds.
If we think about XR and AI, I think in the most developed economies, XR and AI in surgery and healthcare in general will play a pivotal role. I like ambient clinical intelligence that Thomas was talking about, but I wanted to ask you a question, back, where? Because in 10 years is nothing, right? Or you said 2030, right? 10 years is nothing. And I think that most of the world will probably not be very different. Surgery will not be very different to what it is today. So we got to think about that.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that final comment. So I'd like to thank our wonderful panel, Ingo, of course, Thomas, Stefano, Marlies, and Rafael. And I hope you enjoyed that. I learned a lot, had a great time here for the past hour. I hope you enjoyed it similarly. Our next webinar will be next month on surgical leadership. We have a great panel, a global panel, talk about the importance of surgical leadership. It's often dismissed and not really people being trained to be those future surgical leaders. So join us for that webinar next month. And thank you for joining us today. And thank you to the wonderful panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank you very much. Bye-bye, guys.